It was meant to be a routine trip to a sleepy village in Kilifi County. A final visit to seal a 90 million Kenya shillings land deal. Two Asian businessmen and a local land broker had made what they believed was a crucial appointment to expand their dairy business venture. Within minutes of arriving, all three would be dead. What followed, the court would later hear, was both a tale of brutal murder and a slow and deliberate collapse of justice. First, it was the absence of medical experts, which meant the court was denied clear answers on how two of the victims died. Then, witnesses scattered. Evidence became thin by the day. And finally, questions lingered about whether the most central suspect ever faced the full weight of accountability. Tonight, Murder Tapes reopens this file, tracing the cracks from investigation through prosecution and to judgment. I am Brian Obuya. This is not just an ordinary crime story on a TV near you. This is Murder Tapes, where the truth is buried in the evidence. The land killed no one. And so, it begins. Junju village sits quietly in Kikambala, Kilifi County. It is a place where black dust rises gently with every passing motorcycle. It is here where maize stalks bend in the coastal wind and cassava roots cling stubbornly to fairly sandy soil. It is here that mango trees line footpaths that have been walked smooth by decades of barefoot mourning. This is a farming land. It is honest land. Land worked by families who know its moods, when it yields, when it refuses, when it becomes the only inheritance a man can offer his children. The road in Junju is narrow and dusty, snaking past homesteads and small shops, past Junju Primary School, past makeshift kiosks selling tea, sugar, and hope in equal measure, especially hope. This place doesn't speak death. It doesn't smell of murder. It is not a place prepared for spectacle. Yet on one horrific day, Junju would become the setting of a crime so brutal, so sad, so wrong, so poorly investigated, and so deeply contested that years later, the village still speaks of it in lowered voices. Three men would arrive here alive. None would live alive. And what followed would expose violence, but especially the fragile, cracking spine of justice itself. Siddiq and Verali Sumdra was not wandering in Junju. He knew what he wanted. At 48 years old, he was established. He was a businessman with direction. He had resources and he had a plan. The man had embarked on a journey from Mombasa toward Kilifi. His heart was set on acquiring land to expand a dairy farming business. This was no mere dream or a speculation. It was an investment. It was a future that he mapped in acreage and livestock. And Siddiq did not travel alone. Behind the wheel was Rahil Kasmani Mohammed, his driver. I am yet to get a photo of him. Rahil was more than the milkman's transport. He was Siddiq's trust. Like many drivers in business ventures, he shared the road, the risk, and ultimately the fate without ever sharing the power to alter it. They were headed inland, following opportunity and ambition, and not expecting the hostility that followed. James Kafani Mzungu was the bridge, a land broker of many years. He was a familiar name in Junju, a man who navigated boundaries between villagers and outsiders, between squatters and developers, between hope and suspicion, and in the end, suspicion would win. To Siddiq and Rahil, he was access and assurance when they needed land. But to Junju, he was none. To his family, he was everything. To people like Frida Malitso, he was their little brother.
Mdogo wangu. Wa kwanza ni mke, wa pili ni mke, wa tatu ni mke, wa nne akatokea huyo kijana. Ndiye huyo Marege. Mdogo wangu kabisa, mama mmoja, baba mmoja.
James was born and bred in Sagwa, Kaloleni, deep in Kilifi County. This was not borrowed land to him. It was blood soil. He grew up on the dry, stubborn coastal earth where the ground cracks under the sun and ambition has to be tougher than the heat. He attended local schools, walking dusty paths that taught him early that nothing here came easy. And from that hardship grew a man of quiet drive and restless dreams. Someone who believed land could be more than inheritance. It could be opportunity. The land itself tells that story. Partly arid, unforgiving. Its red-brown soil refusing excess, rewarding only patience. This is a place where development always arrives late, and justice even later. And to reach it, we drove for kilometers on a road that barely qualifies as one. It's narrow, eroded, scarred by seasons of neglect. Our 4x4 drive fought for balance. Tires slipping between loose stones and hastily placed gabions. Every turn, a negotiation between control and collapse. And you can literally see that. And along the way, children crossed the road through deep centerline cracks, stepping carefully aside to give way to oncoming vehicles. Their small bodies navigating danger as routine. It felt less like travel and more like maneuvering between life and death. A quiet reminder that here, survival begins early and safety is never guaranteed. This was the landscape that shaped James Kafani. And it was to this land, familiar, harsh, remembered, that he returned, not as a stranger, but as a son of the soil. A man who believed that where he came from could still hold his future. Instead, it became the place where his life was violently taken, where justice, just like the road that leads there, remains broken, uneven, and dangerously unfinished. And so, it began quietly years before the bloodshed. Back in 2014, when James Kafani Mzungu crossed paths with Jacob Akwango Kinanga, a land broker who also ran errands for a law firm. Together with an engineer whose name we were not given in the court records, Jacob and Kafani began searching for buyers for expansive parcels of land in Junju. Specifically, These were plot numbers Junju 355 and Junju 356, a combined 79 acres of prime land owned by Apple Valley Limited, whose director would later be identified in court as Manji Shah. As efforts to dispose of the land gathered pace, a reality could not be ignored. The land was dotted with makeshift homes. Squatters had settled across the property, claiming it as their own. It was James and Jacob who advised Manji Shah that any meaningful sale would first require engagement with the squatters. Manji agreed, tasking the two brokers to initiate negotiations and indicating his willingness to hive off 29 acres of his land as a settlement for those occupying the land. The brokers were eventually directed to Onesimus Gambo, a former MCA with influence among the squatters and a recognized voice in the community. And that's why you need to take note of him, especially because he was a recognized voice in the community. The proposal, however, collapsed. The squatters demanded more land than Apple Valley Limited was prepared to surrender. By the way, I've never known why people always want more than they are given. With negotiations at a dead end, Jacob advised the company to abandon private sale efforts altogether and instead sell the land to the government, leaving the state to resolve the squatter question. After that, the Junju land fell into deep silence. The status quo remained until years later, when James Kafani returned to the same contested ground, this time accompanied by Asian dairy farmers seeking to invest. It was a return that would prove fatal, ending not in a land deal but in one of Kilifi's most horrific and unresolved killings.
Yeye mwenyewe kwanza alikuwa na kazi ya mjengo, achukue plani za nyumba, alafu apewe contact ya kujenga, lakini akawa haendelezi sana hiyo. Akaanza hiyo ya kumara haya ameshikana na watu haya wanataka shamba, yanafuatilia. Hiyo ndio ilikuwa ni kazi yake. Na huyo alikuwa kienda huko anaenda na sababu hiyo ya hiyo shamba, na wale ambao walikuwa wamempatia hiyo shuhudi ni hao wakina Gambo na huyo Rofasi pia na huyo James Kalenga. Hao wengine sijui, lakini alikuwa akiniambia hao watu watatu. Alikuwa ameenda sijui kwa alikuwa ameenda kwa hapo sijui. Si walikuwa wanaenda wakienda tu. Wale wa na wale wa Hindi. Alikuwa akienda mara kwa mara. Nasikia siku hiyo lakini nikusikia. Wale yule sijui mganga akamwambia hawa watu wako sitaki kuwaona tena. Sitaki, kuna wenyewe wanasema wajua mimi jirani na pale na watu wangu wengi wako kule. Lakini mambo ya pesikia mingi. Lakini kujua kwangu najua kama ndugu yangu alikuwa akija Junju mara kwa mara. Hapo ndipo ninapojua. Mara ananipigia niko huku Junju, hata wakati mwingine alipokuja na hapa na gari na hao watu wake hao Wahindi wake.
James had two lives running parallel. He had left his first wife and children, Elizabeth Mwangome, and moved in with a younger Tanzanian woman with whom he had a child. But family, distance, and change had not erased the bonds of kinship. On a Wednesday afternoon, it will be a young boy who brought Elizabeth the news that her estranged husband had been killed. News that would fracture her life and that of their families forever.
Kulikuwa Jumatano nilikuwa kwa chama cha yeo. Ilipofika Alhamisi asubuhi nilikuwa nafua kaka. Akaja kijana mwingine akaja akamidisha, huyu James Kafani mzungu ni nani? Nikamwambia James Kafani mzungu ni bwanangu. Nikamuuliza kwani ana nini? Akaniambia basi kumetokea kisanga huku Junju. Nasikia kuna watu 3 wameuawa, mmoja Mwafrika, sijui ni 2 Wahindi, lakini kitambulisho kimoja ni cha James Kafani Mzungu. Nikamwambia basi mbona mimi sijaambiwa, kama ni kweli singeambiwa. Akaniambia lakini wacha tuangalie kama ni kweli utasikia. Akaenda huyo kijana.
James was the first to be attacked. But let's create some context by going back to the day and moment of the violence. What happened that day would never be reconstructed cleanly, partly because the investigation led by investigating officers Dennis Isemek and Kevin Wafula never allowed the clarity of what happened that day to come to light. But the High Court would later piece together this much. Upon arrival, the trio was confronted by Robert Manga and other people. Manga owns this local bar among others. A court document showed that he makes about 500,000 Kenya shillings by the close of every month. He maintains a voice in the local community. Listen, this part is very important. You might just need to master it. One of Robert Mganga's staff told the court that Manga received a phone call and walked towards a nearby mango tree. That shortly they had raised voices. Then there was shouting, then screaming, all coming from the direction that Manga had gone. Another witness told the court that upon the arrival of Manga at the site of the confrontation, where he had been called, he exchanged tough words with James Kafani, the broker. The witness testified that Robert Manga Mwagosha confronted James Kafani and told him that he had warned him earlier never to return to that area with Asians again. That Manga uttered words to the effect that he would, quote unquote, finish him first. That Manga then struck James on the head with a panga. James fell down bleeding and died. That after finishing James, Manga proceeded to attack the 2 Asian victims.
Huyo ndiye alianza. Nasema leo ni huyo Manga ndiye aliyemuua na watu wakamaliza.
Robert Manga addressed James Kafani directly. He attacked him with a panga himself. With one deliberate, decisive blow, James died there on the soil that he had tried to sell. Manga then rushed back to his signature club and ordered his staff to close the premises. That is the most crucial part of this entire tragedy. And you would understand a little bit later on why I call this the most crucial part of this story. Siddiq and Rahil were shortly after attacked with pangas, stones, sticks, even an axe. The witness who went by the name Peter Kala told the court that the attack was led by Robert Manga. And true to his word, after he was done with Kafani, he took on the Asians. Witnesses told the court sitting in Mombasa that after seeing his life was in danger, one of the Asians asked to be allowed to pray. And in the words of the witness, Manga shouted at him, telling the Caucasian man to pray quickly, after which the investor was struck by Manga before other people followed suit. The bodies of the 3 would later be set on fire. Whether death came from the blows or the fire would remain unanswered, because the post-mortem examination reports were never produced in court. And just like that, 3 lives were ended in the full view of a village that would later fall silent. Mzungu Shume Mwangemi was among those arrested and detained in connection with the murder of the trio. A local border rider who wasted his 4 years at the Shimo Latewa prison, detained for a crime he maintains he did not commit.
Zaidi walikuwa wanatuforce tu, wanatufinya kama labda utaogopa kwa sababu wewe ni mkaaji wa huu mtaa, akwambie anakufinya umwambie ni nani aliua. Sasa kama wewe haukuwa pale mahali utajua nani aliua.
When law enforcement finally descended on Junju, responding to the deadly evening of murders, it came with force. A multi-agency team of the GSU, regular police and administration police, flooded the village. Reinforcements coming from Kijipwa and from Twapa police stations. The might of the state was on full display. By the time officers arrived, Junju had emptied itself. It was a ghost village. Men had fled. Only women and children had remained behind.
Mitangulia kuambia hichi kijiji kilikuwa mahame. Watu wote walikuwa wamekimbia. Ni sawa. Lakini kwa sababu hicho kitu kimefanyika hapa mtaani na kulikuwa hakuna mtu mwenye ameshikwa. Kivyo vyote ilikuwa nikipatikane watu kutoka hichi kijiji washikwe washtakiwe na hiyo kesi. Hiyo ilikuwa ni lazima. Hakuwezi fikwa mtu mwingine wa mtaa mwingine. Ilikuwa lazima apatikane mtu wa huu mtaa ndio ashtakiwe na hiyo kesi. Sasa ukiwa katika huu mtaa wewe na ni hapa ni kwa boma yako, ni kwa familia yako yote iko hapa. Wewe utatarajia nini? Kama wewe utatarajia nini? Na hakuna mahali unaenda, wewe ni mkaaji wa hapa. Na kitendo kimefanyika hapa mtaani. Sawa. Na wenye wanatafutwa ni wakaaji wa huu mtaa. Wewe kama mkaaji wa huu mtaa utatarajia nini?
17 women and children were rounded up, interrogated, and according to the investigating team, they were profiled before being arraigned.
Si nikwambia walishika watu zaidi ya 50 na wakawaachilia. Kuna wengine walioshikwa walikuwa ni waoga, walivyofinywa kidogo wakataja majina ya watu. Hebu tuambieni kuna wale vijana wale wavutaji mabangi pale mtaani. Hiyo tu, wale wenye hawasikii marasta wale wenye vile. Hebu tuambieni majina yao. Wakataja majina. Sasa ukifika pale ukishikwa Dennis alikuwa akikushika anakuuliza nini? Mtu fulani unamjua? Anakuuliza majina ya mtu. Mimi tayari alinifinya kabisa, ananiuliza mganga. Maana yake mganga alikuwa hajashikwa. Sawa. Mganga alikuwa hajashikwa. Aliniuliza mganga. Sawa, mganga. Je, kuna binadamu ana jina moja? Hakuna. Sasa kama ameniuliza mganga, mimi nilikuwa nimwambie nani? Nimtajie ni nani? Nimuonyeshe yupi? Maana yake jambo la kwanza hapo kwenye tuko ananiuliza mganga hayuko. Jambo la pili hamjui mganga ni nani. Jambo la tatu mganga ni majina ya Kimijikenda, kwa hivyo halina mtu mmoja hilo jina. Lazima utaje mganga. So majina mangapi? Kama utataja matatu basi taja mawili. Naweza kukuambia ni nani. Mimi nilishindwa kumtambua mganga huu. Sawa. Lakini alivyoshikwa nikamjua ni mganga. Maana mimi aliniuliza mwisho, nilimwambia sisi ni Mijikenda. Ukiniambia mganga mimi najua yule mganga yule mtibabu. Mganga wa ramli nini, unaenda kule unatibiwa. Sasa ukiniambia mganga fulani wa fulani, hapo nitakwambia yuko mahali fulani, ama kama simjui nitakwambia simjui. Sababu huwezi kuniuliza swali ambalo usijui nikakwambia najua. Si uniulize mtu simjui nikwambia namjua. Utanifinya wewe nikakuonyesha nitakutolea wapi? Nitamtoa wapi? Hiyo siwezi fanya.
It was after these interrogations that Robert Manga, the owner of this club, was arrested. Mganga was born and raised in Junju. He knew these roads his lifetime. He attended Junju Primary School, then went to Chumani High School before studying procurement at university. He was not destitute. Mganga was a businessman running bars and a butchery. He was married, calm, coherent, physically and mentally stable, at least according to probation officers. But land lay beneath everything. The land that the squatters occupied, land whose ownership was disputed, land that outsiders kept coming to view, accompanied by brokers like Kafani, who knew how dangerous such conversations could become. On the day Siddiq, Rahil, and James arrived, Mganga would be placed by eyewitness testimony at the very center of the violence. The evidence would later show that a very crucial suspect never appeared in court. And this was the man who was found the mobile phone belonging to one of the dead victims. You're watching Murder Tips. When we return, we tell you why we take serious exception with the judgment rendered by Lady Justice Wendy Kagendo. It was September 2021 when detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations in Nairobi finally caught up with Robert Manga Mwagosha in Nairobi. These were hundreds of kilometers from Junju village. Police will later say that Mganga had fled the coast after the murder of the 3 men in Kilifi. Acting on what they called intelligence, well, they do that all the time, officers traced Mganga to Tasia in Feather Estate, where a specialized DCI unit moved in swiftly, surrounding the residence and arresting Mganga in a targeted operation. According to Mganga, his arrest was sudden, it was aggressive. He says officers pounced on him, insisting he was on the run and treating him as a man already condemned. There was no detailed questioning or careful caution. Mganga says that there was only the forceful certainty of investigators convinced they had found the face of the Junju killings. And with that, within minutes, Mganga was in custody. His Nairobi visit abruptly ending in handcuffs and flashing police lights and a place on the contested and condemned DCI Twitter page. By the time word reached Junju, the arrest had already taken a life of its own. In a village shaped by land disputes and long-standing squatter tensions, Mganga's capture felt less like the start of a trial and more like a conclusion. Yet, as the case would later reveal, arresting a suspect or suspects was far easier than proving with precision and consistency what truly happened on that bloody day in Junju.
Kisa kilifanyika kwa sababu gani? Mimi kiukweli sikujua, na baada ya kuwa nimetoka ndo nilisikia maneno yanaongelewa, lakini siwezi kukwambia wewe maneno ambayo niliyasikia ambayo sina uhakika nayo. Hapo siwezi ende. Kwa sababu nikwambia bado utaniuliza wewe, utapata swali lingine la kuniuliza na mimi nitashindwa kujibu. Sasa siwezi kukwambia nilisikia watu wakiongea hivi, nilisikia. Maneno ya kusikia hapo mambo hayapo. Niliona ndio naweza kukwambia. Ama nilijua ndio naweza kukwambia. Lakini nilisikia. Na hao wenye walikuwa wanaongea maneno walikuwa hawana uhakika naye. Kwa hivyo mimi siwezi kukwambia wewe maneno. Nilikwambia bado kutapata swali lingine la kuniuliza na bado nitakosa kukujibu. Ndio maana nakudai. Sikujua.
In the end, police were convinced that the people who attacked and killed the trio were Mzungu Shume Mwangemi, Elias Saidi Chote, Onesmus Gambo Karisa, Robert Mganga Mwagosha, Kennedy Mwangemi Shume, Victor Kole Chinyezi Elias Ngate, Daniel Karisa Elias Mbosso, Anthony Wanje Mbogo Elias Mganga, Laban Mwatata Rimba, and Cliff Ngombo Ngari. The 9 were produced before the Mombasa High Court, where they denied killing the investors. Some witnesses in the case would be placed under the Witness Protection Program. Some dropped off and became difficult to bring before court to issue testimony. One of them was pathologist Dr. Mugola. Mugola, upon being stood down and claiming to have the wrong post-mortem report, he never came back to court to give evidence. Others were found through sweat and blood. An example would be Emily Mwangome. She was an employee of Mganga at the Signature Club. When she eventually testified, it was the contradiction in her evidence and that of Mganga that would seal the fate of the murderous businessman. The case against Robert Manga ultimately turned on a contradiction he could not explain himself. The quiet but devastating clash between his defense and the testimony of Emily Ngome, his own employee. Mganga told the court that he was nowhere near the scene when the violence erupted, insisting he had stepped away to answer a phone call and returned only to find his premises being locked. It was a carefully constructed alibi meant to place a distance between him and the bloodshed that unfolded that evening. Emily told a different story. She testified that Mganga received a call and walked toward a mango tree, and moments later, screams erupted from the very direction that Mganga had gone. She placed him at the center of the unfolding chaos, recounting how he later spoke of confronting 2 Asians and an African man, and how he questioned why the bodies had been brought near his premises. Asked where the bodies he talked about were, Mganga said, and later the court heard, that he had paid some pupils to dump the bodies. Emily's account did more than contradict Mganga. It quietly dismantled his version of events. In the end, it was not the forensic science or the missing post-mortem reports that sealed his fate, but the witness who appeared to measure truth and compromise, who placed Mganga squarely at the scene when he had sworn he was never there. Now elsewhere, under the shade just next to the dusty road in Junju, Mzungu Shume, the sole breadwinner of the family, speaks to murder tapes with so much pain and anger. I could see it on his face and eyes. He began by contesting why he was named as the first accused person, yet he was only enjoined in an ongoing case. It appeared that his relationship with the investigating officer was strained.
Sikuhusika kwa aina yote ile. Sawa. Mimi najua tu nilishikwa kwa sababu gani. Alafu kitu kingine chenye ilifanya mpaka Dennis awe na nguvu na mimi, mpaka Gambo ndo alikuwa mshtakiwa wa kwanza kufika mahakamani, nikabadilishwa mimi ndo nilikuwa wa kwanza. Sifa ile uliona vizuri. Sika mahakamani mimi ndo nilibadilishwa nikaekwa wa kwanza. Kitu chenye kilimwacha Dennis awe na nguvu kabisa na mimi, nilikuwa na faili mimi au kombe, nilikuwa na kesi hiyo ya mauaji. Na hata hiyo pia iliniachilia.
He told murder tapes that police officers, particularly one Dennis Isemek, pounced on him, believing that his previous 2014 murder case made him easy prey. He spoke angrily of extortion and of officers demanding money. he spoke of suggestions to sell land to buy freedom.
Huyo pia alikuwa mmoja wapo alishikwa kwa hii kesi, lakini hakushtakia. Yeye familia yake ilimtolea 1.5 akampa Dennis. Akaachiliwa hapo police station hapo base. Gambo mwenyewe, huyu Gambo mimi mwenyewe ndo nilifanya kumzuia, lakini alikuwa anatoa pesa tu. Anadanganywa na Dennis tu atoe pesa. Mara ya mwisho kabisa wametupeleka kotini, tumerudishwa Shimo la Tewa. Sawa, bado Dennis anaongea na huyu Luka, ndugu yake Gambo. Luka aliambia aongezwe pesa, na alikuwa amefikisha 40 Gambo. Akawa anadai aongezwe 20 ndio amwachilie. Alikuwa angemwachilia vipi wakati mtu amefika mahakamani hata kama hajashtakiwa lakini amefika mahakamani? Angeachiliwa vipi? Dennis alikuwa na uwezo wa kumwachilia ama ni mahakama sasa ndio ina uwezo wa kumwachilia? Mbona alikuwa anatumia hiyo njia? Sisi kama mimi tayari binafsi ni vile nilikuwa sina pesa. Lakini kama ningekuwa na pesa nikampa Dennis, angeniachilia pia mimi. Wangeshtakiwa watu wengine, mimi pia singeshtakiwa. Na hiyo kwa sababu ya ukosefu wa pesa, umaskini wangu mimi, ndio ikabidi ninyanyasike na pesa.
Frida Malitso, James Kafani's sister, would tell us something else.
Siku hiyo yule Gambo akaachiliwa, akashikwa huyu mganga, ndio akaingizwa ndani. Nikasema haya sasa hivi kesi nikamwambia hata wewe usije. Yule askari akasema usije, nitakwambia mimi kile ambacho kinaendelea. Itakuwa nakwambia. Haya. Mwisho mimi kawa situli, namuuliza, nampigia simu, namba yake pia niko nayo. Haya vipi? Sema amefungwa amefungwa miaka 40. Haya. Juzi anipigia asema amefungwa miaka 28. Kamwambia wewe mrongo, wanidanganya mimi, na sikia aliachiliwa, wote waliachiliwa. Wote waliachiliwa. Siku nyingine mwezi ule uliopita anipigia asema nataka 3,000. Kamwambia 3,000 za nini? Bone wale watu walitoka. Hawakutoka. Amefungwa miaka 28. Uliniambia miaka 48. Leo hii imebadilika tena, imekuwa 28. Mwambia watu walitolewa, usinidanganye. Ndio sijui alikuwa niomba 3,000 za nini, hata sielewi. Anaitwa ile jina hapa atina gusa. Ile jina nimemsevu CD case. Manaka ndiye alikuwa na hiyo case.
And when I spoke to Onesmus Gambo's family members, they also spoke of having been invited to issue bribes to ensure that the former MCA does not stand trial. But police misconduct and lack of professionalism did not end there. There was this man who is said to have been found with one of the deceased person's mobile phone. He was never arraigned. Mzungu Shume saying the police bungled its own case.
Najua polisi nao pia hii kesi ni sawa iwe ugumu kwao. Kwa sababu gani? Yule shahidi mhusika mkuu wenye walikuwa ni wapate information kutoka kwao, walimwachilia. Sawa, walikuwa watasaidika vipi? Kwa sababu gani? Wewe sasa uwawe, alafu mimi nijipatikana na simu yako wewe. Sawa, mimi nikipatikana, kama si mimi mwenye nilikuwa wewe, lazima mwenye aliua namjua. Either simu niliuziwa ama mimi ndo nilikuwa nikachukua simu. Si ni kweli? Lakini yule mwenye alipatikana na simu walimwachilia. Wasa huo ushahidi walikuwa ni watoe wapi?
Now let me take you back to that part that we believed to be the most important section of this story, where I asked you to note the actions of Robert Manga and the killing of James Kafani. So, despite Robert Manga being found guilty and convicted of the murder of James Kafani, he was never jailed.
Mimi kivyangu naona haitoshi, sababu hata kama ni miaka 3 na yuko nje anafanya kazi zake, mimi naona si sawa. Hata hiyo 3 kwanza ni kidogo. Sababu hata amefanya familia hata haiendi vizuri, kuna watoto wanataka wasome, pesa hakuna. na yeye amefungwa miaka 3 nje na bado anafanya shughuli zake, kama ni watoto anafundisha, kama ni kazi zake anaendelea nazo. Sisi huku tunapata tabu. Kivyangu naona si sawa. Ni dhulma. Ni dhulma kwa kusana miaka 3 tena nje. Hata sidhani kama mtu akiwa mtu anafungwa miaka 3. Wana sikia watu hapo ndani miaka mingi, lakini anafungwa miaka 3 tena nje. Sasa viliendaje hivi? Miaka 3 tena nje, nikaambia aliiba basi. Basi akapewa miaka 3 aende tu akiripoti akifanya kazi nyingine atakazopewa. Lakini kuwa mtu alafu miaka 3, mimi naona si sawa.
If a court finds someone guilty of an offense, murder for that instance, and still proceeds to give a probation period of 3 years, then it flies on the face of the sentencing guidelines. It's an insult to our criminal justice system, because remember, it's supposed to serve a deterrent purpose. If criminals are supposed to walk away with a slap on their wrist, then what makes us, we the law-abiding citizen, to continue abiding by what the law requires, whereas we can easily get away with our wrongs? That would be a miscarriage of justice. Purely, it's a miscarriage of justice. And I really hope that the Director of Public Prosecution is in the Court of Appeal against the sentence.
Now here is the context.
So the doctrine of common intention is embodied in Section 21 of the Penal Code. It arises in a scenario where people act in consonance to achieve a certain goal that is criminal. It has several facets. One, people need to have, or rather these people working in consonance need to have what we call the meeting of the minds. They need to have a pre-planned. They have to plan it ahead. Then they need to execute it in a certain way so as to achieve a common end. And whenever the authorities investigate and charge, they are usually found liable, as if each of them participated, or rather each of them participated and each of them bears liability as a person. Such that a good scenario is where people want to rob a bank. So you'll have someone who will break into the bank or, cover the cameras so that they are not able to be identified. The other one will probably master you have a master key to be able to open the safe for the banks. And then there will be those people who a standby driver who will have a getaway car. If you look at it, say someone like the getaway driver might easily get away with it because, well, it's no offense to drive people from one place to the other. But in this case where he's working in consonance with to achieve a robbery to a bank, so each of them carries a burden. They carry their criminal liability as if he acted throughout the whole process. Yes. So that's the doctrine of common intention.
Across Kenya, mob justice has carried a heavy price. Courts have handed down 20, 30, even 40-year custodial sentences to men and women found guilty of taking a life in the name of the crowd. Judges have called it lawlessness. The Kilifi High Court, for example, sentenced 4 people for their involvement in the brutal lynching of 4 other individuals accused of witchcraft in Marani sub-county. That was on October 17th, 2021. The 4 were sentenced to 40 years in prison for each count of murder, with the sentences running concurrently. These were Amos Nyakundi Ondieki, Crispin Makwaro Ogeto, Hesbon Ogondi Gishana, and Evans Ogeto Okari. Only Crispin was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The judge cited his age. He was a minor. Elsewhere, on the 4th day of July 2025, Justice Rose Ougo, sitting at the Bungoma High Court, sentenced Jacob Barasa Wambia, Saul Wekesa Wambia, Timothy Sunguti Lukorito, and Ruben Wanjala to 20 years imprisonment for killing Kennedy Wekesa in May 2022, just about 3 years earlier. Sarah Nanjala Makoha, due to her age, was sentenced to serve 10 years imprisonment. She was 70 years old. And I want you to take that very seriously, that this is a 70-year-old woman being sentenced to serve 10 years in prison for a mob justice caused murder. Despite the probation report saying that the community could accept them back, Justice Rose Ougo reached this decision, saying in paragraph 27 of her judgment that Kennedy Wekesa died due to the injuries inflicted on him as a result of the beating inflicted on him by the accused persons, that their actions were unjustified. The deceased was suspected of stealing a chicken. Taking the law into their hands was an unlawful act for which they are responsible, and they have to be held criminally liable for their unlawful actions. The accused blamed other persons for having beaten the deceased. It could be that there were other people involved, but the evidence of prosecution witnesses number 1, number 2, and number 3 is that these accused persons were involved. On 28th March 2025, Justice Richard Nyakundi sentenced Juliet Busuru alias Maureen, Paul Osinde, Gregory Mayebo alias Job, and Benjamin Njenga to 25 years imprisonment for the murder of Ahmed Mohamud Ismail in Tarbo sub-county, suspecting him of stealing a mobile phone. Justice Nyakundi saying, even assuming this allegation was true, it cannot justify the extreme violence employed by the accused persons. Their actions far exceeded any reasonable measure of self-defense or citizen arrest, and indeed, it constituted a serious crime in itself. The evidence shows that this was a case of mob justice, where the accused persons took the law into their own hands with fatal consequences. Such extrajudicial actions undermine the rule of law and proper administration of justice in our society. They cannot be condoned under any circumstances. End of quote. And I absolutely love what Justice Nyakundi says in paragraph 67 of that judgment, that the gravity of this offense demands a substantial custodial sentence. The actions of the accused persons have not only robbed a man of his life, but have also undermined the rule of law and the proper administration of justice. Their participation in mob justice represents a dangerous disregard for the constitutional rights of others and the established legal processes for addressing alleged crimes. Let's proceed and just take a look at other bits of existing authorities. Now, even in older case law, appellate guidance substituted a 35-year sentence with a 20-year term for mob justice-related killings, affirming substantial penalties for such conduct. Let's consider the appeal of Baraka Kenga Chengo, Said Masudi Shanga, Wilbert Rashid, Samuel Tandale Mwalembo, and Wilson Karisa, who were charged before the Malindi court in 2018 for killing Farah Omar Dahi, when they suspected him of stealing a motor vehicle. Justice Richard Nyakundi again had sentenced the 5 to 35 years in prison for the mob justice killing. The only thing the Court of Appeal did was to reduce the sentence to 20 years and acquit Samuel Tandale and Wilson Karisa because the entire judgment did not expressly state their involvement. Look here. The Gatembu Kairu, George Odunga and Pauline Nyamweya bench noted that we agree with the trial judge's findings and we have no reason to disturb his finding as regards the conviction of Baraka Kenga Chengo, Saidi Masudi Shanga and Wilbert Rashid Rasi. We find the sentence of 35 years imprisonment from the date of their arraignment in court manifestly excessive. We set aside the sentence of 35 years and substitute therefore a period of 20 years imprisonment. We do not disturb the period of the commencement of the conviction. With that, Mothertape submits that mob injustice is a crime that must be punished loudly to deter the next mob from gathering. And yet, in the murder of James Kafani, Robert Manga was convicted, then spared prison altogether. He was sentenced to serve 3 years on probation, not behind bars and not away from society, but a free man. So the question is writing itself. If others convicted in mob lynching cases rot in prison for decades, what message does a probationary sentence send? Does it deter or does it quietly license the next act of violence? Because I believe when punishment loses its weight, justice doesn't just fail the victim, it emboldens the crime. And in the words of the High Court in Eldoret, it is a dangerous precedence.
I would put it as outright betrayal of consumers of justice, to the extent that this turning point, where is it in the course of the judgment or the sentence that the good judge finds the light on her way to Damascus, is what I'm lost in. It doesn't matter whether the victims were there. The law itself is supposed to serve a certain purpose, to cure the wrongs in of society. If you are to allow a very common wrong of mob injustice, if I may call it so, then this society will go down on a downward spiral to a path of self-destruction.
High Court Judge Wendy Kagendo ended the lengthy judgment with a plea for professionalism. She noted in her judgment that, apart from the brutal force of rounding up helpless women and children and instilling the fear of the gods and the mighty hand of the law, it appears the multi-agency team achieved little or nothing. I will not tie in my clarion call for professional investigations as hurried and brutish arrests end up in gross injustice. How do we bring closure for the families of the victims who have awaited so long? As a matter of concern, I note that none of the relatives of the two Asians gave evidence. They set out on a business venture to improve their lot, and we cannot answer what happened to them. It is such negligent acts which give the justice sector a bad name, and often the judiciary is left to blame. I propose a fresh look into how investigations are handled, especially high-profile cases. The stakeholders should consider prosecution-led investigations. Otherwise, justice will remain an illusion in some of these cases. End of quote. That professionalism is very important, because without it, justice becomes an illusion, and villages like Junju are left to bury the truth in dust.
Junju ilikuwa nikienda kuna jamaa zangu, siendi tena, sikanyali Junju tena. Maana hata kifika hapo kiangalia pale mahali alipoliwa kakangu, nasikia kulia. Siendi tena, lakini wengine tunaona wananiambia Ndio nikaambia wameachiliwa wote. Nikasema hai.
Now, just like it has remained, Junju still remembers. The dust still rises and the farms still feed families. Children still walk past the place where a cow once parked and screams once cut the air. But memory does not fade so easily. 3 men came here seeking land. Only one conviction emerged. And even that feels unfinished. And just for the record, the land in Junju killed no one. People did. In Junju village, time has passed. The blood has washed away, but justice has not followed. Siddiq, Kafani, and Rahil arrived seeking a land deal and instead met a violent death amid confusion and investigative failure. Serious investigative failure. James Kafani was killed in full view of witnesses, yet the outcome of the case has left his family questioning whether the law truly carried its weight. Why was one witness believed on one death but doubted on 2 others at the same scene? When even the court admits this was among the most poorly investigated cases it had ever seen, the verdict itself raises a deeper concern. Did justice truly speak, and does this judgment inspire confidence in the system meant to protect life? And so we submit tonight that until the unanswered questions in Junju are confronted about land, police conduct, and proportional justice, this is one case that remains a painful lesson in how truth can fracture inside the courtroom and give ideas to alternative justice. I am Brian Abuya. Thank you for watching. We are here because bad people exist. And to expect bad people not to do wrong is madness. Good evening.